Hello guys, here is a very quick tutorial on how to create the torso part. We need multiple controllers. Let's start with a very simple nervous circle, and then let's drag it up. I snap it to where my where the hip joint is. For some reason my joint moved on the Z a little bit. Let me just move it back. Or is it moving? Okay, let's move it back. I'm not sure what happened there. Oh, it's just moving forward. I'm sorry, it's actually fine. So okay, I have a controller for the center of gravity. I can freeze transformation on it and then call it AC COG, which stands for center of gravity. Okay, now I need another one, and that one will go up and then snap to where the chest is. Okay, oops. And then I can change the shape a little bit just to make it more like the controller for the entire ribcage. For realistic ones, the entire ribcage shouldn't be changing the shape. It's more like a rigid entity, so that's why we have only those joints there. But if you like, you can have like all the joints here from the hip all the way to maybe there, and to create all those smaller segments in the middle, it's your choice, but the setup is pretty much the same thing. Anyway, so that's my chest controller. So AC chest. Okay, now duplicate the COG again. Let's move it to the middle. It doesn't matter where it is. Somewhere in the middle should be good enough. Freeze transformation on this one, and then of course this one. Okay, now last controller I need to have will be the hip controller. What I can do with this one is make it higher here, and of course I need to make it smaller on that direction. Drag those two down. Just make it look different than the center of gravity controller, but it can actually be any shape you want it to be, as long as that makes sense to you or makes sense to your animator. Okay, so that's the hip controller. I can call this one AC hip. Okay, 4 controllers. The one in the middle, I can call this one AC. Let's just call it spine. The chest, spine, hip, and then center of gravity. Okay, now my joint chain is a single chain here, but this structure is actually really not that flexible, so I need to break the spine joints outside of this system. What I can do here is duplicate my chest joint. So now I have 2 chest joints. The new one, I don't need anything underneath it, just delete it. And then let's call this one JT spine end. So that's the end of the spine joint chain. The original chest joint, okay, I don't need it to be in the hierarchy anymore, so Shift P to unparent it. Now my chest is outside of this system. Let's do the same thing for the hip. What I need to do is duplicate the hip joint. Of course, open it and delete everything underneath it. That leaves me only 1 hip joint. I need to make the radius bigger so it's easier to see. Okay, that's my hip joint. Select the second joint on the spine joint chain, parent it to the new hip joint I just created. Okay, that way I separated the spine from the original joint chain. Now my original hip joint will be still there, but it's not the parent of my spine joint chain anymore, and this joint chain is now completely separated from the body. Okay. Now let's create a IK on this chain. Go to rigging and then skeleton, create IK spline handle. In here, all the settings you can keep them as default setting, or one thing you can check out is auto parent curve, but that really doesn't make that much of a difference anyways. So let's just use the default setting. Click on this first joint and then the last. That will create a IK curve here. A IK handle here. Let's name this IK spline spline. Okay, the curve here. So Maya will also create another curve for you. Okay, this curve will be called curve spline span. Okay, those two new things Maya created will be the IK element that is controlling our span joint chain. Okay, so now I have the joint chain and then the IK, and this spline IK actually uses this curve it created for us to control the joint. If now I move the curve away, you see now the curve can control the entire joint chain. If I grab something on the curve, like those vertex on the top, I can actually drag the vertex. Now you see the joint chain underneath it. I think it's much easier to see if we isolate them. So that's the spine curve, and then that's the let's see the joint chain there. Okay, let's isolate them. Now if I grab or change the shape of this curve, it will drive the joint chain underneath it or on top of it and change the shape of the joint chain to match with the shape of the curve. That's how this IK spline works. You can do that on the bottom one too. Now instead of controlling this curve, I need to create clusters to control the curve. Grab the top two vertex of this curve. Let's go to deform cluster. Okay, let's grab the bottom two and do the same thing. Now I created two clusters. Let's call this one cluster spine top. The second one will be cluster spine bottom. Okay, two clusters. The top one will be parented to the chest joint. Okay, so select the top one and then the chest controller. Sorry, the chest controller. Press P. Okay, now grab the bottom one and parent it to the hip. Okay, now if I rotate my hip joint, I can rotate the bottom cluster. If I rotate the top controller, it will rotate the top cluster. Okay, one more thing we need those controllers to control are those joints there. For the top joints, which is the chest here, I just need to use the chest controller to do a parent constraint on the chest joint. So chest controller first, and then chest joint, do constraint, parent constraint. Okay, make sure you have maintain offset on there. Let's do the same thing for the hip controller, and then shift select the hip joint. Let's do another constraint, parent constraint. Now if I rotate the bottom one, it controls everything on the bottom, including the hip and the legs. If I grab the top one, the chest joint, the chest controller, I can rotate everything on the chest, and everything from the chest all the way to the hand and to the head. Okay, they will all follow. Now the hierarchy here on those controllers will be the COG will be the master, so everything will be underneath COG. Let's open COG. The chest will be following the spine. Okay, that's the hierarchy. Now if you grab the spine, you can rotate it this way, and then you can rotate the chest the other way. It behaves just like a FK controller there, but it's actually driving a IK underneath it. You can also drag the chest up. It behaves like a stretching, but it's not actually stretching. To make it actually stretching, we need more functionality on the joints. The first thing we need to do is go to Window, Node Editor. Let's clean things up here by pressing that clear button. And I need to know how long the curve is for the IK. Let's grab the curve spine, spline. Okay, grab it here. I need this shape node here, and I also need another node called the curve info. Just press the tab button on your keyboard and then just type in curve info. That create a curve info node. Let's open it. I need to use the word space to control another thing called import curve here. It doesn't show here, I don't know why, but we can drag it to the white point here and choose other, and then Maya will ask you which one, and then there is the import curve. Okay, if you do that, there will be a new import called import curve, and then if you select the curve info now, because it's connected with the word space of the original shape, the shape of this curve. Now if I select this curve info actually tells me how long this curve is. This curve will be the curve that is controlling the spline, the spine joints. And this one tells me how long it is. Now I need to know that because when I drag my chest, the curve actually changes with it. See, now it's 46 unit long. I can drag it even longer. See, it's even longer because the curve scales with the controller now. So what I can do is I need to compare the length difference, or the length, how much the length has changed on this curve, by subdividing the current length by the original length. What I can do here is press tab and create a multiply divide node, sorry, open it. I need to use the arc length as input x, use divide as the operation. The input 2 will be the original length. In this example, it will be 18 because right now I'm just measuring the original length, right? So it's 18 here, that means the original length here. This 18 showing on input 1x will be the curve info because I just connected. The arc length goes to input 1x, so the input 1x will be the arc length. And because we're in the bending pose, so that's actually the original size of the curve. Okay, now if I drag it up, if I use divide, I can divide the current length by the original length, so I know that how bigger this curve has actually stretched. And then I can use that to scale my joints also. So all I have to do is grab my joints, all those joints one by one. I don't need the last one though. And then press this plus button to get them in. Okay, and then I can use the output X of my multi-divide node to control the scale. Let's see which direction should I scale those joints. For example, this one, that's scale X. So I just need to connect output X to scale X. You see how it becomes longer? For the next one, it's actually scale Y for some reason, but you have to test which direction your joints should be scaling along, which axis should that be. You can test that by scaling them yourself like this. So in this case, if I scale it this way, I see the scale Y is actually the value that it's changing. So that's why I need output X to control scale Y here. Okay, for the rest, I think they are all scale Y. I can open them one by one. and just use the output X to control their scale Y. If I do that and go back and take a look, you see now this joint in the middle, it's easier to see when I'm in this mode. Yeah, this joint in the middle now will always match with the curve underneath it, and then it will always end up connected right there with the chest. Okay, so that's how we set up the spine for now. It does have the stretching functionality and everything like that. It doesn't have the counter stretching yet, but I will go over that later. For now, all I need you to do is get to this stage. So when you drag the chest controller, those joints in the middle on the spine should be stretching with it. Okay. And of course I need the hierarchy to be right, so the FK works at least. FK should work. Use that one to control the bottom part. The ACCOG controls everything. Okay, so for now, this is all I need.